Welcome back, everybody. This is my friend Derek. I'm lucky enough to have two interviews in the same month, so I'm really excited. After having a little bit of a dry spell there with interviews, and during summer, we were pretty busy. So, this is a friend of mine from my church. I'm sure you remember, I actually met you in the marriage class that our church does.
I do remember that was kind of a rough time for both of us, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a
Yeah,
lot of
that was
things going
right
on.
after I got married. So
Yeah,
I was kind of figuring out what marriage was.
just so you got it all figured out now, right?
Yeah, I'm an expert. Almost 3 years and I know it all.
Yes,
No, it's a learning process every day. I think you learn something different.
it is. Well, and interestingly enough, I think that one of the reasons that I see a lot of marriages fail is the reason that I see a lot of addicts go back to using, right? Because in our addiction, in my addiction, I worked at it every day. It was one of the number one things on my schedule. It was one of the most important things when I woke up. It was one of the last things I thought about before I went to bed. And so obviously, I could do that for 35 years and I could go at it wholeheartedly. But I don't think that a lot of people that are in recovery approach their recovery with that kind of dedication. And I definitely don't see a lot of people approach their marriages with that kind of dedication. So,
That's a really interesting point. Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. It has tested my selfishness. I may have not even realized I was as selfish as I am. And it tests that in you. And forgiveness. Oh my goodness. I was just thinking about that the other day. God tells us to forgive, and a lot, infinity. So I was thinking about a specific person that I struggle to forgive still, and I thought to myself, well, how could I keep forgiving someone who keeps hurting me? And it kind of dawned on me, not that my husband and like he doesn't hurt me on purpose, but we both get hurt all the time and we both have to forgive all the time because we're both human. There is a person that exists that, does hurt me and I will forgive until, well, we die.
well, and I know you're a mom, and those times are coming too with your children. I had a pastor tell me once. I got exposed to a lot of pastors while I was in prison. Uh, one of the things, one of the amazing things about that time in my life is that if you're on, we'll say, a good behavior list, you had the opportunity in most weeks to attend 6 different chapel services with visiting ministers. And so you got to hear a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of different theologies, and really it was a time where you could kind of figure out what your relationship with God looked like, because it might not look exactly like what that guy said, but there might be a piece of something he said that sticks with you. And I find that there are a lot of those pieces in going to 6 chapel services a week for 2.5 years that I got to pick up from a lot of men. And he
Yeah,
said,
that's pretty awesome.
our marriage is what teaches us to be like Christ. It is the relationship in our
True.
life that teaches us to be like Christ. And
Yeah.
that's a long, long learning process for us, right? Because I started out, and I'm still a long, long way from being Christ-like. But if we think about all the times that God forgives us for the things that we've done, if we think about how He continues to pursue us, even maybe sometimes most especially when we're running from Him, not just when we don't want to be caught, but when we're actively trying to get away from Him, right? And He still pursues us.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and maybe there's some lessons in the way that Christ treats us, in the way that we treat our spouse.
Wow, we got deep real fast. I don't even know how we got there.
Well, you
Oh, the
started.
marriage class. The marriage class. Yes. Well, marriage is great. I am so grateful. I actually, when I first got saved, I had a deep feeling that like the end is near, and if it was in my lifetime, I'm like, God, I just want to experience marriage. Like, and I'm grateful that I get to experience marriage. It's been great.
Rebecca, I'm an open book. Not proud of the things that I've been through, but amazed at the things that God delivered me from. So we can go down any direction that you want to with this. Brief criminal
Yeah.
history, what led to my imprisonment, my salvation experience in a prison cell, um, the amazing opportunities I had to minister to other men in the 2.5 years that I was there when I was saved.
I'll let you take it away. Go for it.
All right. So I grew up in a physically and verbally abusive household with a mother that was manic depressive, chemically imbalanced. And if anybody's ever dealt with someone like that in their life, they know that there are these high and low peak periods. And when mom would have one of her extreme crashes, then she would get medicated and she would start taking her medicine for a while, and everything was okay for a while. And then we got to the classic point of, well, I'm better now. I don't need my medicine. And so for the rest of us, it was okay, hold on to your hat because we don't know when it's coming, but we basically know what's coming. There's going to be a meltdown. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so my first cognizant encounter with her during one of those meltdowns was actually on my seventh birthday. And she hit me hard enough to knock me out of a chair and put 27 stitches in the side of my head and rupture an eardrum. And that was the night of my seventh birthday party at home.
Oh.
The thing that made it a little bit unique is my mom was active duty military. And so she had this stellar service record at every duty station she was assigned at. And there would be this one blow up inside of 2 years. And because her commanding team didn't want it to show as a bad mark on her record, they kind of swept it under the rug and just recorded it as a brief hospital stay for health reasons. And then we'd go on to the next place, and she had a clean record, and she was medicated, and everything was going good for a while until it didn't. And then when it went bad, again, we were in a new place, so it would get swept back under the rug. Uh,
Mm.
so, not all that uncommon for military brats to experience physical abuse, although normally I think it's at their dad's hands. So that made it a little unique.
Yeah.
Uh, and then there was sexual abuse outside the home when I was about 10. So, in the culmination of all of those things, my father was undiagnosed, but either on the spectrum or had Asperger's, very high functioning. And his way of dealing with mom's episodes was that he would go and use drugs while she was having her blow-ups. And he would just kind of... And the reason that I would say he was on the spectrum or had Asperger's is it seemed to him that the obvious solution was to introduce me to drug use so that I could get through her periods. And so at about the age of 8 years old, my dad introduced me to some fairly serious drug use, including LSD and cocaine, marijuana, and some other stuff. And strangely enough, guess what? Starting to use serious drugs like that at 8 years old leads to a lifetime of battling addiction. And
Yeah.
worse than that, I think it made an if-then-goes-to statement in my head that said, when things are bad, it's no problem, you just go get high, and it'll make it better.
Yeah.
Which is, obviously a really, really dangerous neural pathway for us to create. But it stuck. And I battled my addictions on and on off and on for 35 years. Until I was I've been clean for just over 2,500 days now, and I'm 51 years old. So that's a pretty major milestone. Yeah, October 20th.
8 years old is such a tender age, and my oldest is 7. I couldn't even imagine. I mean, your little brain is just like not. It's just a baby brain. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And that's why I would say, my father was highly intelligent. He had a master's degree in psychology. He wasn't a dumb man.
Oh wow.
There were just
Yeah.
there were problem-solving skills that he thought were obvious that would not appear so obvious to everybody else. which kind of leads you tend
Do
to.
you think he? Sorry. Do you think he? I mean, did he learn that from his parents,
Well, my
or
grandfather
you
was a
don't think so?
raging alcoholic. Um,
Okay.
absolutely, alcohol and salt shakers killed him. He ended up having like 11 major strokes before he passed away. But the Jack Daniels bottle
Wow.
and the salt shaker were standards on the dinner table at Grandpa's house.
Okay.
So
So a little bit of
yeah,
learned behavior.
and then of course,
Okay.
Dad being born in what 45, so he was in college around the 60s, and that just was a thing, right? That was absolutely something a lot of college students were experimenting with, and having grown up in that abusive background, that's when his journey with drug use started really heavily. Was around 1965, 66.
Yeah. Now, how did you do in school with all this drug use?
So when I decided to go to school, my grades were always really good, but the older you get, the more involved with your drug use you get, the less often it's interesting to you to go to class. There were just
Definitely.
Um, I enjoyed school, but I didn't enjoy answering the questions about the bruises and the black eyes and all of those kind of things that I had to try and figure out a way to explain away. I actually played football for a lot of years in school because then I had an excuse for all the bumps and bruises and black eyes, and I really never enjoyed playing football very much. But everyone saw how big I
Wow.
was, and it gave me an excuse. If you're on the football team, nobody asks you about how you got a black eye, right?
Right.
Uh,
Interesting.
so,
How about adulthood? So you get out of school, I guess, and then what happened from there?
well, I actually, so at 14 years old, my father sat me down and informed me that I was going to have to live somewhere else because I was not good for my mother's mental health.
Hmm.
Uh, and I managed to stay in school through my sophomore year in high school. But when I figured out I was going to have to repeat my sophomore year in high school, I dropped out. And at 17, I joined the Army. When I talked to the recruiter, he said, "Oh, you're 17. I'm going to have your parents' signature. You probably have a better chance of locating than I do because I'm pretty sure she's active duty in the military. So if you can find her, then she can sign the papers so I can go to basic training." Well, I hadn't spoken to them in a couple of years.
Yeah. Now, where did you go? Where did they send you?
Send me to a place. He just told me I couldn't live there anymore.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Um, being
Well, where did you go?
uh, so, I spent time on and off the streets, and then eventually, up until my time joining the military, I got three friends together and we all rented a place. And, it was a really, really awful place, but between the three of us, we could afford the rent. Other people that were having troubles at home. So, that's not a
Wow.
recipe for disaster or anything, right? Three underage teenagers sharing a house and the alcohol and all of the other parties that go along with that kind of living environment. I just knew at 17 when I figured out I was going to have to repeat a year of school, and I'm working a McJob, whatever it was. I was at a fast food place, barely making ends meet. I knew that just wasn't going to be a thing for me, and so I joined the Army, and that went really well until about a year and a half in, and I got a slot to go to airborne school, and I got injured really, really badly, dislocated my shoulder incredibly, and being 18 and a half years old and not really knowing anything about the world, I just kind of threw my hands up, and instead of reclassifying or getting training in something else, I was medically
Hmm.
retired from the Army at about 19 years old. Um,
Okay.
and so there I was again. It just, what are you going to do? I didn't know a lot, but I knew that in the world of illegal narcotics, I could turn a little bit of money into a whole lot of money pretty quickly. And so that's kind of I would bounce around from place to place, and I would get high to deal with all of the stuff that was going on in my head, I sold drugs when I needed money. Wasn't one of those guys that really enjoyed the whole game of it or wanted to have stuff to show off. I needed enough money to live, and I could take two or three
Right.
hundred dollars and turn it into $3,000 or $4,000 pretty quickly, and then I would ride
Yeah.
until the money ran out. And
Yeah.
uh, married a girl that I got pregnant not long after I got out of the army. Had a very fiery relationship with her. She was an adult dancer, and I was a bouncer, and we were both lost in our addiction. So I know it's a massive
Yeah.
surprise, but their marriage did not work out. And
Yeah.
honestly, I had kind of cleaned up going through the custody battle. And when I lost custody of my children, my savings were depleted from fighting all of the court costs and everything. That was one of my biggest spirals back down into addiction. Like I really, really got out there uh, during that period a lot
Yeah.
because my kids were gone, my wife was gone, my life was over. Right. Um, anyway, there's a ton of details, but fast forward to oh geez, I guess 2017, when I was going to prison the first time for drug charges. And so in when you first go to prison, you go to a sorting facility where they decide where you're going to do your time, where you're in your cell pretty much 23 hours a day. And
Wow.
on Christmas Eve, in a prison cell in a reception, it occurred to me that I didn't own anything, including the underwear that I was wearing. And worse than that, I wasn't even the first guy that wore those underwear. So there was nothing left. My relationship with my kids was done. I had lost my business, lost my home, my Harley, my truck, my wife, my everything was gone. Uh,
Yeah.
and it was at that moment on Christmas Eve on my knees, bawling in a prison cell. Uh, a little filler. One of the most amazing things about the Missouri State prison system is even during that time when you're not even allowed to have a photo or a letter from home, you are allowed to have a Bible in your cell, and that's the only thing that you're allowed to have in your cell is a Bible. And so I spent a lot of time reading the
Huh.
Bible, and that Christmas Eve, got to thinking about the people that I knew in my life that were Christians and what their lives looked like, and thought maybe that was a little better option than
Yeah.
what I had. And there was nothing left, so I gave myself up to Jesus Christ, December 24th, in a prison cell in somebody else's underwear. And
That's awesome, though. I love
well, I don't know what everybody's rock bottom is, right? But for me, he had to literally take everything from me before I was going to turn to him. I was too proud and too stubborn that if I had a little thread to grab onto, I was going to keep trying to pull myself up by that thread. And when he took all of those threads away and all of the safety nets and all of the everything, when I hit that actual rock bottom, then there really was nowhere for me to turn to but him. And
it. It reminds me a lot, except for I didn't find him then, or I didn't see what he was doing. But I mean, basically, then my next step was jail or prison. I'm pretty sure I shared it on the channel, but taking away literally everything. So I had given away my car to the dope dealer, and I'm pregnant, 7 months pregnant on the streets. No home, no family at the time because they couldn't do it anymore. Um, and I had said to myself over and over, I will get clean. I just want to get my car back because it was supposed to be like he's borrowing the car, but
yeah,
that lasted a long time, and I knew it was gonna be like I couldn't ask for it back. I don't even know what my plan was, but 2 days before I got sober, me and my son's dad, we passed a car crash, just remnants of the car, like glass and whatever, and there was a coffee mug that looked just like my coffee mug that had been in my car at one point, and he was like, my kid's dad was like, "That looks like your coffee cup." It was just laying in the street. I was like, "It does. Small world." Well, like the next day, I find out that that was my coffee mug. My
Mm.
car was gone and totaled. And after weeks of saying I'll go to treatment once I get my car, it was like I was like, okay, no, you don't get your car, and now what do you do? And I had no excuses anymore. It was like, okay, my reason for staying out here is now gone, and now I gotta go. He was totally, yeah, everything. He
Yeah.
took everything away.
Always
Nowhere else to
working.
go.
Always working.
Yeah,
So
he really.
that was a pretty short stay in prison because I actually got him to commute it over to an in facility drug treatment, which is about a 6 month program. Uh, and although I wasn't completely comfortable with my sobriety yet, as far as what that was going to look like out on the street, I knew that
Yeah,
I was saved. I knew that I wanted something better. But when I got released, they sent me right back. Basically, you get out of prison and you haven't worked anywhere for a while, and you've got a felony criminal record. You've got no money, and the parole officer gives you some awful job that barely makes the bills. Eventually, long enough of that, of living in a nasty little apartment that was in an apartment complex with a bunch of other people that were not trying to stay clean, um, and going to PO appointments and doing everything, and just literally coming home from work tired enough that I would sit down on my couch to take my work boots off, and I got woken up by my boss knocking on the door the next morning to pick me up, just exhausted, beat up.
yeah,
So eventually I took one of my paychecks and I went to the dealer and I turned $300 into $2,000, and I was off on the run again.
yeah,
So I ended up going back to prison on a parole violation, residency restriction. And so I thought, not that prison is good, don't get me wrong, but when you get on the good behavior list, you have a job, you don't have to worry about the lights, you don't have to worry about, are the bills going to get paid? You don't have to worry about getting kicked out of your nasty little apartment or any of those things. It wasn't that bad. And it seemed to me, if I could get with one of these guys that was coming into prison that was 35 years old, and I could talk to him about God and I could help him to see the light, then I could save 10 years of the garbage that I went through. And what if, by God's grace, I could get a man when he came in at 20 or 25 years old and help him turn his life around then and see that he didn't need to go down that road I had gone down? How amazing would that
yeah,
be? How amazing would it be for God to use you as a part of that? And so that's just kind of what I figured my thing was. That's what I figured my new relationship with God was, to get to know him better, to continue to go to chapel services, to do Bible studies in the day room, and to help men make that one good decision that God's got waiting for them, but to do it where they haven't lost their whole lives. When I went back the third time, because I was a third time convict, and with the charges that I faced and the fact that there were some judges that were very unhappy with me, I had an 18-year sentence that I was supposed to serve a minimum of 14 years on. And so you just don't make plans to go anywhere. 14 years might as well be a lifetime, and who knows what's going to happen to you
yeah,
during that time. And that was just before I was eligible for parole again, not before anything else. So about
right,
2.5 years in, they come and they said, uh, "You've got a parole appointment." I went, "Yeah, right. Even if I have it on the first charge, I don't have it on the second one or the third one. This is a complete waste of time." I was very casual and maybe at some level a bit disrespectful of the process. And then 3 days later, they called me and said, "Yeah, you've been granted parole." And I went, "Oh." Well, now what? Because I
Huh.
still didn't have anything. I still didn't have a support system. I still didn't have a plan for a way to be able to stay sober. I knew God better than I had. So when they gave me my release date, they had already packed up all of my stuff. And I literally, the day before I was supposed to get released, I went to my internal parole officer and I said, I'm not leaving. She said, no, no, it's all been approved. Your home plan's approved. You're good to go. You go tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. And I said, no, no, no. You don't understand. If I walk out the door tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., 3, 4, 5, 6 months, I'm going to be right back in here. And I'm not doing it. I said, if I have to smack a guard in the mouth on the way out the door, I will do whatever it takes to stay here. I'm not going back out to that world. I'm not doing it. And, uh, and she just kind of looked at me shocked and, I don't think anybody's ever told me not to let him go. I'm like, well, I'm telling you, I'm not going. So about 3 months after that, a representative from an aftercare program called Mission Gate Prison Ministries came in during one of the times that we had chapel services, and they said, "Hey, we have this 9 month residential discipleship program available to you men to home plan to. You come and live with
Okay.
us, and we have all of the support system in place. We have employers that are used to dealing with guys that have, felony conviction and felony parole. We have bus passes for you, and the parole officers will come to the house so you don't have to figure out how to make your appointments and start having missed appointments. Uh, on top of which, we have Bible study twice a week. We have Celebrate Recovery meetings once a week. You're required to go to chapel. And so all of this sounded great to me. And after a couple of months, I got approved and I got my home plan changed to Mission Gate. And from there, I've been off and running, really. It's been an incredibly different journey. So, Missouri state prison systems have a 93 to 94% recidivism rate. And what that means is that of 100 people that get let out of prison today, within 3 years, 94 of them will be back in prison, which is just
Yeah.
absolutely awful. And with the Mission
Yeah.
Gate program, for those of us who graduate, and the graduation rate is only somewhere between 15 and 20%, because a lot of guys just aren't ready. But for those of us that complete the
Right.
entire 9 month program, it's about a 3 to 4% recidivism rate. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be on that side of it, of the not going back side. So,
So that was, I mean, I guess you were sober in prison, but uh, you got out, and was that
and
it for
yeah,
using?
it is. I actually
Awesome.
didn't use, I did use a little bit during my break in between my second and third, but honestly, I
Yeah.
turned down drugs more times than I used them because there was something in my heart that felt like I was violating a deal that I had made with God. I think there was
Yeah.
something that, honestly, out of literally just physical habit. I think today is 2,507 or 8 days sober. So that's pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so what did you do after you graduated? That I also want to know. I think I had an idea of how you and your wife met, and I think I was totally wrong.
Uh,
Um, when did you and Holly get together?
so Holly and I were together for about 4 years when I went to prison. Um,
Okay.
and we met in our addiction. And actually, when I
Okay. So
told
I was.
her that I was coming out of prison on the third trip, she was still actively using. And I said, that just isn't going to work. Like, you're going to have to either get sober or we're not going to be able to see each other. Like, I'm just not,
Yeah.
I'm not prepared to battle that in my house every day. I'm not at a place where that's going to
Hmm.
happen. And so she amazingly got sober for 30 days on her own with no program before my release date. So that when I got released, she had been clean for 30 days.
Oh,
And about 3 or 4 months after I got out, I guess we got married. I actually snuck off, kind of broke the rules of the program. We were required to go to one of 5 churches, and you were supposed to get permission to do anything else, and I really didn't. I left the house that morning and I hopped in a car and we drove down to Jeff City to a pastor that we knew, and he performed the wedding ceremony, and then we had to drive like crazy to get back so I could make it back to the house before curfew that night. Not much of a honeymoon.
Eh, we got married in a courthouse too, and we have yet to go on a honeymoon, so I'm fine with it though. I feel like some of those more spontaneous weddings, they make for great marriages. Okay, so you guys are you get married. Now, did you keep living at that place?
So we were married for about 6 months while I was in the program, and so
Mm-hmm.
when I got out this time, we had an apartment set up because she had been living in the apartment. I had a really decent job. God blessed me with an amazing job. And I stayed at that job from 7 days after prison until I was there for 5 years. So, seemed to be breaking all kinds of cycles that were in my past. And life has been pretty good since then. It's not to say that there's not ups and downs, but during those, gosh, it's been just over 6.5, almost 7 years now. It's been a wild ride. I lost my mom. So my mother passed away just after I graduated from the program and had moved out.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that news on a Saturday while I was at work. And the worst feeling in the world came over because my father was there. My parents and I got back in touch while I was in prison. Strange.
Okay.
I'm standing at the kiosk where everybody's sending emails out to all of their friends and family, and I only had one email address. And so,
Mm.
for some reason, I had remembered an email address that my mom had 25 years ago. And I sent an email to it. Said, "Hey, it's me. This is where I'm at." And she got back in touch, and we talked on the phone quite a bit. And we had seen each other at Christmas time that year, in between Christmas and New Year's, the year that she
Mm-hmm.
passed away.
Wow.
And so I had started to rebuild this relationship with my parents. Uh, and then my dad called me and told me that she had passed away. And I couldn't be there because I was still on parole and I couldn't get a travel pass from my parole office because the
Mm.
officers weren't there on the weekends. So I had to wait until the parole offices opened up Monday morning and go through all of that, and then drive 8 hours down to Alabama to be with my father and help him take care of arrangements for my mom. About 2 years later, Dad passed away, and that was tough because we had spent a lot of time on the phone, and we spent pretty much most of my vacations over that time. I was down there helping Dad. He was getting older, needed a little help around the house, and he
Mm-hmm.
was lonely. They had been married for 47 years when she died.
Yeah.
I was concerned about him. When he passed, I had to go down and close up his house. He was in a rented house. Had to take care of all of his possessions and Mom's possessions, and there was a little bit of money left over by the time all of the bills were paid. Not a great deal. And I'll tell you the truth, I was scared. Um, I was scared of having $20,000 in the bank.
Yeah.
Just having lost my mom not that long ago, having lost my dad, it was like, when they talk in the Bible about having just enough, like that was my happy place with God. I had enough to pay my bills, but I didn't have a bunch
Mm-hmm.
extra sitting around to think about doing something stupid with.
Sure.
And so when I got that money in the bank, I was scared. And I thought, well, you know what? My father was a great motorcycle enthusiast. I have never in my life had the money to own a Harley Davidson. So on the way back from Alabama, I stopped by a Harley dealership and I bought a Harley. And I ride a lot. But I've also been blessed with becoming a member in the world's largest Christian motorcycle club, and part of our mission is to go out to the 1%, the outlaw motorcycle clubs, and we're there as spiritual support for those men. So it's an opportunity for me to be around the people kind of from my old life, but on a completely different level. Walking into a clubhouse with God on your side is a whole different thing than walking into a clubhouse with a bag of dope in the trunk of your car.
I just love the stories when God's picking the people that um, you would never think, like the bikers or whatever. My dad tells me all the time he works overnights at Anheuser-Busch. Just for fun. He doesn't need to work there, but he likes it, and he
Mhm.
likes working overnight. But anyway, he's like, there's this guy that's got tattoos all over, and he looks rough, but he's like a total Christian, and I love that. And I don't think he always was. So turning people that don't look like it, that don't fit the mold, and they're believers, and I mean, goodness, you are a light. When I do see you at church and stuff, you are always smiling. You're always so nice to me and everybody else. I think I think it's great what you're doing. Yeah, I
Well,
definitely. I mean, you must be touching people because you have that light. It radiates off of you.
well, thank you. It's pretty amazing once you've done something like 3 prison trips. You realize this stuff out here isn't that bad. And not just that, but when I was lost in my addiction, there were times when, I was wandering the streets for 4 or 5 days trying to find a place to lay down and sleep where I wasn't going to get robbed, beat up. Life is just not that bad, so it's pretty easy to smile now. Thinking about the places that God delivered me from, yeah, it puts a smile on my face.
Yeah.
And so, in the just over 2 years that I've been associated with Disciple Christian, not long after I joined, uh, we have a lot of ministers in the club, although not everybody is. And one of the ministers offered to take me under his wing and sponsor me through theology school. And so on April 20th of this year, I was actually ordained as a minister in the church. I completed my theology training. And so, yeah, now it's a whole different road. I've performed a wedding. I have uh, been minister at 6 or 7 baptisms. I make hospital visits, for people, and it's
Yeah,
just
I love
crazy.
that.
It's crazy to think, that there's that Bible passage where God says, I think to Jeremiah, I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you. And
Hmm.
we get to thinking about the 45 years of absolute garbage that I went through, with an abusive household and the years of battling addiction and all of the other things. And now he's using me to reach people that maybe are not going to hear it from somebody else. We have an amazing lay minister. Sean is absolutely incredible. But I can't really imagine Sean ever walking into a Hells Angels clubhouse to talk with anybody about God.
I was just telling a friend of mine recently who has been, I know God's been chasing her for years and has put her in my life as close as we are, but she's very unsure and she's had a really rough go in her life. God's going to use us to reach. So, like for me, I'd like to think that's probably people in addiction, or, that's my background. And she's had some sexual abuse, and I'm like, those are the people that you need to help. You go through these things that are awful, but if you come out on the other side, then those types of people that are going through that same thing you went through, they're going to be more likely to listen to you. I'm not going to walk into a biker place and get anybody to take me seriously.
Oh, I
And I
totally agree.
can't talk on other subjects like the trafficking. That's the word.
Yeah.
I didn't deal with that, but there are people, like I'm like, dude, you need to If you just believe, because there's people out there waiting for your help. I'm telling you.
There really
Sheesh.
are. There really
So,
are. And, that's the reason that God takes us from all walks of life, because the people that might hear it from you may not hear it from me, or vice versa. The people that can
right.
hear that message from me may not hear it from you. And so God uses all of us. He needs us in every shape and form so that we can go out there and reach the lost. He's not worried about the
Yeah.
99 that are coming to church every weekend. He's worried about that one that's still out there wondering, how can I possibly do this? Why would I do this? What's the
Yeah.
point
And
of
we
any of
need
this?
more people who are on fire and not just going to church on Sunday and that's a wrap. All right, till
Yeah.
next Sunday. It's funny. My grandparents' era, I feel like they were really quiet.
Mhm.
You don't talk to people about your beliefs, and you just go to church, and that's it. But I do see lately now. Again, I've only been saved for I don't know 3.5-ish years, and I see a lot of people really on fire and really, if you will, radical. And I'm like, I love that. I,
Well,
I
it's
love it.
one of the things that I've joked with a few people at Grosse Point about, and I don't know that I've ever said it to you because it might be inappropriate, but in going to 6 church services a week inside the prison, so every time you go into the chapel, 50% of the men that are walking into the chapel are going to be completely strip searched. Like socks, everything, bend over and cough, do the whole 9 yards. And leaving the chapel, 50% of the men are going to be completely strip searched. And going back into your housing unit, 50% of the men are going to be completely strip searched. So every church service that I attended, there were 3 opportunities where it was a 1 in 2 chance that I was going to be completely strip searched. I might be completely strip searched 3 times to go to one church service that lasted 30 minutes inside the prison chapel. And I made the decision to do that 6 days a week. So I asked some of the people at church on occasion, I'm like, yeah, I see you here on Wednesday and I see you here on Sunday, and that's cool. But how often would you be here if you knew that walking in the door there was a 50% chance you were going to be taken off into a side room with 3 or 4 of your friends and y'all were going to be completely strip search naked together?
That's funny.
Is it a
You were
level
really committed. I mean, that means something. You were committed and you love the Lord.
of, yeah. So, yeah, it's hard to come up with an excuse to not go to church now, right?
Yeah, for real.
It's not the level of persecution that Christians get all over the world. We have brothers in our club that are in Nepal where Christianity is illegal, and they still wear the same cross on their back that I wear in my motorcycle vest. And it says Christian across the bottom. And just for the crime of doing that, they are regularly beaten to a point where they can't get out of bed for 3 or 4 days because they're out there proclaiming Christ. There's places where it's really, really tough to be a Christian, right? So that little bit of
Yeah.
persecution here is nothing really to oh, look at me, I got my stripes. But yeah, what does being a Christian cost most people in the United States in this day and age? Right? We're not going to be really persecuted at work unless you work in a really weird place. It's not going to cost you your safety. It's not going to cost you your family's ability to earn money.
Right.
We're kind of soft.
We're totally soft.
We're kind of soft. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was watching. There's a documentary about Iran and wolf in sheep's clothing. I think is what it's called. I can't remember, but the way that they have to have underground churches,
Yeah.
and we're so spoiled here. It's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, online sometimes you get people saying mean things, but that's pretty much the extent of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, we are very blessed to be here, and we need to take advantage of that because it's not going to be forever like that, but we need to take advantage of it now.
Well, and one of the things that I try and keep in mind too is that my minimum sentence was 14 years, right? So 2.5. Now we've added almost 7 to that. So there's still 5 years of my life that, none of my life belongs to me. It all belongs to the Father. But there's still 5 years of my life that God's already paid for, that I'm still supposed to be in a prison cell. So if I'm not out there working for Him, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. It's awesome. What do you do now? Because I see you around the church sometimes talking to other men at the
Hmm.
church in a way that makes me believe that you are involved in their lives somehow in an addiction recovery type of
Yeah.
setting. Do you do that with the church?
So I actually did that through the Mission Gate program. I was an in-house counselor for the men that were coming through the program for a couple of years. And
Okay.
I still stay in touch with a great deal of the men. I've gone back and talked as a guest speaker a couple of times. And
Hmm.
I think that everyone kind of knows me at the church as, and I'm not trying to say they put labels on me. This is not accusational in any way. Like you said, I'm the guy on the bike. A lot of people know me as the guy that's been to prison. I've given my testimony in front of the church and on video a couple of times. And
Hmm.
they know that I'm clean and sober for nearly 7 years now, right? So I think that there are a lot of conversations that get started uh, because of those labels. And I know a lot of times we want to think of labels as bad things, but I don't look at it that way. If it makes it easy for you to come up and speak with me because you have, I've had people come up and talk to me because they have a son who's facing legal troubles, or they have a brother that's battling addiction, and they just don't know what to do. They don't know anybody from
Yeah.
that world. So I think it's
Right.
created that bridge for a lot of people to come and get a hold of me and say, look, this is not something our family knows how to deal with. This is nothing that we know anything about. What can we do? And so there's kind
Yeah.
of some informal counseling that goes on there, right? We know
Yeah.
that addicts have to make the decision that they don't want to be an addict anymore, period. But there are things that
Right.
people do that enable that, and then there are things that people do that can help curtail that activity. And I think that unfortunately, a lot of people enable their loved ones' addictions to continue for so much longer than they need to, out of the goodness of their
Yeah.
heart, wanting to love them through this and wanting to help them out. And if I just give them a little hand up, it's going to get them out of this spot. And like you
Yeah.
personally know, and I personally know, when your life is really focused on your addiction, all of that help is not help. It's just not help. You can love them and you can, maybe feed them a meal on occasion when they haven't eaten, but providing them a place to stay whenever their world falls apart and providing financial means for them whenever they get themselves into a spot and doing those things is not helping them, and it's certainly not loving them, even though it feels like it is.
Um, I'm with you. I mean, you can love someone to death. That's the problem.
Yeah,
And as harsh as it seems, the best thing that my parents ever did was let me go.
yeah,
And when I did decide to get sober, I mean, I had a parent. I won't say which one. I don't want to I don't want to dishonor this parent, and I'm not even mad. But they were like, get rid of my number, lose my number, and I
yeah.
was like, I know your number by heart, so sorry, I just can't do that. But we're fine now, and I did call my parents whenever that car got wrecked, and I was like, okay, I'm ready. And they, sure enough, they Ubered me to the rehab.
I think that that's the one other thing that I try and impress on people too is that when you have someone in your life who is genuinely trying to battle their way out of addiction, it may not take the first time. I know people that have been to rehab 4 or 5 times. I had to go to
Yeah.
prison 3 times, but to be encouraging to them every time they make active effort to actually get clean. Not the statement, hey, I want to clean up, but hey, I'm in a rehab right now. Hey, I need to get to the rehab. Hey,
Yeah.
I just got out of rehab. Not to completely open your life back up to them, because as addicts, we're professionals at hurting the people around us. That's one of the things that we did really, really well. Um,
Yeah.
so not to just, oh, well, you've been to rehab, let me open my life back up to you to get hurt that badly again, but to
Right.
love on them and in the best way that you can to help them make those steps. Because when you get out and you're clean and sober and you don't have any support system, the odds of you staying clean and sober are just really not good. You need to know that
Yeah.
there's a chance to rebuild. Not that all of a sudden the debts are washed clean and, we're going to wipe the board clean. But yes, we can begin to have a relationship again as long as you stay sober. That's something that I think is incredibly important to. I know definitely to a lot of the men that I fought with coming out of prison and coming out of their addiction, them being upset about how hesitant their families were to get back involved in their lives. I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. You trained them to be that way. How many times did you lie to them? How many times did you say this time is different? How many times did they stand by your side and see you through it? So be patient, both for the addict and for the family of the addict. Don't get in a rush. One of the smartest things I heard from one of the dumbest people that I knew when I was lost in my addiction, when he was getting ready to get out of prison, and I knew he was going to be back, and he knew he was going to be back. I said, man, what's your plan? He said, don't make any sudden moves. And it sounds really simple, right? But especially lost in our addiction, we made really hasty decisions, like giving the car keys to our car over to a dealer thinking we were going to get it
Oh my
back,
God.
right?
I
Uh,
know, right? It's
Whereas if you'd
insanity.
had an hour to sit down and actually think about that decision, you probably wouldn't have done it. But, we put the pressure on. Oh, you
Wow.
got to decide now. You got to make this decision now. It's a right now thing. And for addicts, that's not a
Yeah,
good
well,
place
the
to be.
instant gratification.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to a lot of people that are um, just getting sober, and the women, and well, I've been clean for a month and they still won't let me back in their house or whatever, or won't let me see my kid. And it's like, well, duh. I mean,
Yeah.
you want to use over that or you don't want to use over that. I didn't see my daughter for the first year
Mm-hmm.
after, maybe even a little bit longer. And that ripped me apart every day. And I was mad, and I told them I was mad. But looking back now, it's like, of course, they didn't want me. I mean, I was lucky enough that my parents and her dad were taking care of her, and she wasn't in the system. I mean, and they were protecting her and making sure that I meant it this time. And then I had another parent that didn't talk to me for 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
but we're all good now. And I mean, was that a reason to use or not a reason? I mean, you pick, you pick.
Yeah. Yeah. You decide. I think that's one of the most disheartening things that we get caught up into in my addiction. Every emotional high or low was an excuse to get high, right? And
Yeah,
there was actually a girl I was running around with for a while in my addiction whose grandmother had passed away. And it was one of those watershed, heartbreaking moments for me, although I didn't really let it sink in at the time. But I was going to take her to her grandmother's funeral. And she looked at me after crying for quite a while and said, I cannot disrespect my grandmother by showing up to her funeral high, and there's no way I can deal with the fact that my grandmother's dead while I'm sober. And so she didn't go.
wow.
And that's the trap that we can find ourselves in when we're in our addiction, right? Is in order to have a good moment, we have to have drugs in our system. And the
Mm-hmm.
moment something bad happens to us, we have to have drugs in our system. And
Yeah.
we so completely disconnect from learning how to deal with our emotions, with learning how to deal with the adversities that life's given for us. No matter what the problem is, the answer is dope. You know, good day,
Mm-hmm.
dope. Bad day, dope. Sun came up, dope. Sun didn't come up, it's going to rain all day. Might as well sit at the house and be high. Whatever it was,
Yeah.
everything was an excuse, and so every behavior and every decision that I made for so many years got run through that filter. And so there's a lot of learning. Like you said, it was about a year before you saw your daughter. Well, you had a lot of learning to do in that year about how to deal with the emotions that come with being separated from her, the emotions from missing those milestones in her life that happened in the year you were gone, right? How
Mm-hmm.
easy would it have been to turn in that emotional state back to using drugs? And we have to be really, really prepared for those things. And I think that may be the hardest thing to do. I haven't really had much of a struggle with the want to get high because of some of the ministries that I work with now. But I'm blessed that God waited long enough in my life that that was no longer a challenge for me. Anyway, yeah.
Well, cool. We're almost at an hour. Or we are at an hour. I did have one question if you want to answer it or if it's too much of a sensitive question.
I'm an open book,
But do
sister. Ask me
you,
anything that's going to help somebody.
okay, well, do you have a relationship with your kids now?
So
And
I
how
don't.
many were there?
So there are
No.
two
Okay.
that were born to me in my first marriage, and then two that I raised in my second marriage. And
Okay.
so it's interesting, right? It's hard. They're grown. They're doing well. I have softly reached out to them, let them know, a few things, a few highlights in my life since I got out of prison, and offered to meet with them if they decide that they want that. Um, but at the time that I went to prison the second time, that was when I got divorced from my second wife, and my sons rallied around her. I had hid my addiction from my family until about 6 months before that. And that was when I actually got arrested at the house. And so all of my dirty laundry came out. What does God say in His Word? He says, what's done in secret is going to be brought into the light. And it was finally. And there was a
Yeah.
great sense of betrayal. And I'm sure with the boys, as much as you want to try and keep their things together, there were things that I missed, football games and stuff like that, because of my addictions over the years. Um,
Yeah.
so they rallied around their mom when we got divorced, and I think that's great. And to tell you the truth, if it's kind of two sides of one coin for me. My father saw me struggling and told me that drugs were an okay way to deal with that. If you talk to any one of the four sons, they would tell you there is no way in the world you could ever promise them anything that would encourage them to go and try and use drugs. When they saw what it did to my life, when they saw the way that it tore me apart, I lost my martial arts teaching career. I lost my business. I lost everything that I owned, including my marriage and my relationship with them. So if I did nothing else in all of the years that I was with them, even battling my addictions, my sons will never use drugs. There's no way. They're not going to pick up a cigarette. They're not going to go get high. For them, drugs are the absolute anti-answer, much less a possible solution. So it hurts, to think that maybe I will never be a part of their lives again. But in a way, I am a part of their lives. In a way, I was, even if it wasn't in the best way, I was an example to them of what they did not want to do with their life. And you know what, Rebecca, I'm going to take that as a win. If that's the only win
Mm.
that I get with them, is that I don't have to worry about my kids going down that road and using drugs and finding themselves in a prison cell over it, that's a win that's worth it.
That's an amazing perspective. I can't wait for people to hear that. I've never heard anybody say that. That's awesome. That's awesome. You are, like I said, you're a light. You are a light. I so appreciate you coming on here, and I can't believe I didn't think of you sooner.
Well, I'm glad you did. This has
Um,
been my absolute pleasure.
yeah, thank you so much. Do you want to close us out in prayer?
Oh, it would be my honor. Yeah.
Awesome.
Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for, what we see as chance opportunities. We know that you're working all things behind the scenes for our good. The chance that Rebecca and I would sit in a marriage seminar across the room from each other 3 years ago, and that it would lead to this conversation. There's no way that either one of us could have predicted it, Father, but you know the end from the beginning, and we thank you for that. Father, I thank you for our sobriety, for the lives that you've given to us once we've turned ourselves over to you and made Jesus Lord. And Father, I would just ask for all of the people that are still out there battling their addictions, and for the families of those people that are battling their addictions. Father, make yourself known to them in whatever way that looks like. If it looks like a stay in a prison cell, if it looks like an automobile accident, if it looks like street ministry. Father, I don't want to try and put you in a box and tell you how to do you, but put on the hearts and minds of the people that are willing and able to help, that they would say, "Here I am, Lord, send me." Prepare each one of us that have known your goodness, grace, and love, that have felt your helping hand to get out of these holes of addiction, to get out of the darkness in our life. Soften each one of our hearts to go back and pull one other person up. If we don't do anything else, use us to reach back and pull one other person up with us, and let them pull one, and let it be an epidemic and a great revival, and let everyone involved know that it's all done in your name, for your glory, and with your grace. And I ask for this blessing in your Son, Jesus Christ's mighty and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you.
God bless you, darling.
You too. See ya.